Our panel discussion that focuses on the theme importance of design research to create human-centered designs. Now, to begin with, firstly, I'd like to invite on stage our session moderator, Mr. Ashish Deshpande, Director, Product and Retail Innovation, Elephant Design. May I please invite him on the dais, and let's have a warm round of applause. I request you, sir, to please take your center stage. Right in the center, it would be easy for us to capture you on the video as well while you moderate. Okay, all right. So we're going to have too much of nectar, as you wish, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ashish Deshpande started his design entrepreneurship 26 years ago by co-founding one of India's pioneering design practices, which is Elephant Design, and he leads the product as well as the retail innovation group. Joining him on the dais, I'd now like to invite our next speaker, Dr. Bala Bharadwaj, Director, Boeing Research and Technology, India Center. He's the leader of engineering and technology for Boeing in India, and in this role, he provides leadership to Boeing's research, technology, as well as engineering activities in India through the efforts at Boeing India, as well as mutually beneficial partnerships with academia, government organizations, as well as industries. Our next speaker for the session is Mr. Pawan Kumar, Managing Director, Altair Engineering, South Asia. Let's have a round of applause. He comes with over 27 years of experience in engineering, software, services, and hardware sales, and he's responsible for the overall revenue and profitability of Altair in India. Moving on, our next speaker for the session, may I please request the audience to please help me welcome on stage Mr. Guillaume Penongue. Mr. Guillaume Penongue, if I'm right, sir, this time? Superb. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the head of Product Design Studies, ISD Rubika, India, DSK International Campus. And a few words about our speaker. In fact, he started his career when he joined Altinova and worked on a new concept of self-service bicycle maintenance station. And as a creative director, he was not only in charge of the product design, but also of the corporate and the brand identity. And as the product range expanded, he designed racks, parking lots, and storage lockers, always keeping the focus of innovation through design. On that note, may I also invite our next speaker, Mr. Narendra Ghate, Head Research and Strategy and Service Design, Tata Elxsi. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the chief designer at Tata Elxsi, and in his current role, he spearheads the research and strategy and the service design domain. In a career spanning over 15 years, his association with Tata Elxsi has been since 1997. Moving on, our next speaker for the session, let's have a warm round of applause for the Director of Ticket Designs, Nishma Pandit. Under her leadership, Ticket Design has over the past several years established itself as a respected and highly awarded design consulting firm with a wide range of products launched in Indian as well as international markets. She started her career as an industrial designer with Tata Johnson Controls. Our next speaker for the session, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Abhimanyu Kulkarni, Creative Director, Philips Design India. Well, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to our final speaker of the session, may I also introduce the fact that while he's the creative director as well as design center manager of Philips, in his role, he manages a multidisciplinary design team of 26 designers that's based in Gurgaon as well as Bengaluru, and he works across 3 sectors of lighting, healthcare, as well as consumer lifestyle, as well with Philips Research. So on that note, it's now time to begin with another enriching session. I'd like to hand over the proceedings to our moderator of the session, Mr. Deshpande. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Do I still have 60 minutes, or is it the 50 minutes which is being shown there? 60 minutes? Fine, okay. I think we have a power-packed panel, and I think the subject is very interesting. Design research in human-focused or human-centered design. I think this is bound to throw up a good lot of insights, because what we have here is a whole lot of people, professionals who have been working in the design research field for several years, and I think they have practiced design research. So I think this is the best panel one can actually hear things out from. But today I'm going to actually set the context, and we'll try and cover the relevance of design research, new methods which possibly are being followed, advent of technology in design research, and as well as look at education. So we'll try and cover all these points. Let me start by actually quoting and trying to remember Charles and Ray Eames, the American design couple, who way back in 1958 penned the seminal India Design Report. I think many of you might have read it. If not, please do read this India Design Report. I think it's there in NID archives somewhere on the, and I think on Ranjan's blog it definitely is there, and that's one place you can always find the India Design Report. And I'll state Eames where he says in the report, in the light of the dramatic acceleration with which change is taking place in India and the seriousness of the basic problems involved, we recommend that without delay there be a sober investigation into those values, those qualities that Indians hold important to a good life, that there be a close scrutiny of those elements that go to make up a standard of living. Now, maybe the Eameses could foresee the change which was taking place and laid stress on the importance of critical understanding of elements, qualities, values which we hold close, and in their own way laid the foundation to linking research with design in India at that point of time in order to improve the quality of life. I think that somehow laid a very, set the tone for what was to follow in design in India and specifically design research. And this was 57 years back. So 57 years later, when we stand today, design research, is it relevant? So I'm going to ask this question anyway to the panel, and I think it's relevant. In my opinion, it is relevant. And the reason being this, that today we are actually an emerging economy. We have an eye on the global markets. We're suddenly being looked up as a powerhouse of sorts, which maybe tomorrow, due to its maybe intellectual capital, people capital, and so on, is going to contribute to the world success and the world on the world stage. The government has promoted Make in India, which might be our latest tagline in India here. However, this tagline will not work effectively, and all of us know that. I think the first panel addressed it to some extent, unless the prefix of design gets attached to this tagline. So it should be designed and make in India for the world, right? I think we all agree there. So from design from India to become acceptable and desired globally, so that it can add economic value and social value to what we do here in this part of the world, it has to demonstrate differentiation in terms of function, quality, and the value objects get, and the price. Right? So all these aspects need to be there and differentiated. Only then design eventually will be able to succeed in a differentiated manner. And we understand today, and we heard from the earlier panel, that design is not about aesthetics, and design is not only about style, right? It is a process which can be applied to improve performance, efficacy of products, services, people, brands, as well as businesses. So, I think most of the people here understand design as a process, but let me just to set the context correct. The process of design is very simple. It's a stepwise process. It begins with understanding the subject at a very large, broad scale, and then focusing on specifics. Based on the understanding, you generate a set of insights. We saw the gentleman earlier, Subramaniam, from Whirlpool, talk about insights which were picked up by with their design team while they were in the markets, following and immersing themselves with users. Those insights are envisioned into ideas, and those ideas are then taken forward into prototypes where things are tried out and tested. Now the first step of this process is where design research begins, and it carries on all the way till the end where there is testing, and from the testing it feeds back to this whole understanding part, which was the first part, and instead of being linear, it's like an open spiral where it keeps populating the understanding about the subject, and hence it leads to better design, right? So design research helps in understanding what is called the context for business, context for the vision, intent, and goals. It helps align business interests to people needs and humanizes technology. Okay. So that was the context. However, maybe, and now this is I'm going to start addressing the panel, that the reality is different. This is all well said and done, and I think there are companies like Whirlpool and Apple and so on who maybe to some extent are looking into the process and following it in all sense more like a culture. But most business organizations tend to lean heavily on technology and engineering. They begin with technology or their business goal first, and then eventually somehow design gets plugged in at some point. Right? Now this is a provocation. You can disagree with me. Yeah? And many of them actually are paying lip service, yeah, to the whole design process. Steve Jobs, in fact, once famously remarked that it's hard to design products by focus groups and consumer research and so on. In fact, he said if I go to consumers and try to figure out what they want, by the time I figure out what they want and produce the object, the wants would have changed. But he went on to produce some great products in his lifetime. So I would like the panel to actually reflect on this, yeah, and see if they really consider design research as an important element, and do they see this really contributing to the towards business and social transformation, right? So Bala, I'm going to begin with you first.
Okay.
So you have been in the technology research field for a long time, and now you have been spearheading the research center in India for Boeing. Yeah? Do you see a fit for technology scheme in the scheme of things for human-focused design research in what you do? And how do you see it contributing to the business, product, service innovation at Boeing? Could you start with your example?
Okay, so I guess I will start with contradicting you. I've not been in the technology field all my life. I've been in the design field all my life. Okay. I'm not sucking up to this audience here. The reason I say that, I think somebody made the comment, I think Subramanian just a while ago, he was talking about the connection between what were the three things he said? Technology, design, and consumer. In our company, in the way we look at things, it is technology, engineering, and the consumer. We don't call it consumer, we call it customer because our products don't quite fit the FMCG model. We have customers who use our products. So going back to how does it fit, I think the design element is there throughout the life cycle of our products. The way you imagine what it could look like, we don't go to people and say, what kind of an airplane would you like next? Usually our airplanes, our products, that are not even airplanes, are created leading the market, which means you have to envision certain things. You have to understand whether that envisioning that you did is relevant, is it meaningful? Will somebody connect with that? Will somebody benefit from that? So even from the conceptual stage, in fact, when we talk about engineering, we have two groups. We have the conceptual design group and we have the detailed design group. So there's a bunch of people who are conceptualizing the product of the future, and in our industry, it actually takes a long time. We have been conceptualizing products in the 1990s that are still not actually out in the market. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to convert that concept into reality. As I was walking in this morning, there was a board there where people could make comments, and there was only one comment when I walked in, and it said something to the effect that design is common sense, or common sense is design. I forget the exact sequence. I largely connect with that. I think design is common sense, but not just common sense. It is common sense combined with constraints. In a real life, you have constraints. You have constraints from what technology can do. You have constraints from the marketing department, from the finance department saying, well, create a product, but it better be less than 10,000 rupees so that I can go sell it. There are constraints in terms of what materials I have, what people that I have. So it is really common sense, bringing all these things together so that you have some kind of an end result. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what business you are in, people are the consumers. We are not making, people talk about B2B. Well, what does the second B do? I sell a product to another business, but what does the second business do? They are probably selling it to another business or to the consumer. So at the end of the day, it is the consumer that drives every product. And whether you call it a fancy name like design or you call it old-fashioned engineering, I think it's the same thing. And I guess I'm old-fashioned. I would rather call it engineering.
Right, so design is getting equated to engineering, and that's precisely what I talked about, and I think we're going to debate on this more. I would like to hear from Abhimanyu, right? Okay, so Narendra, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, no, I just
you want to comment on this? Yeah, please go ahead.
I was going to let's say, contradict your earlier one, since he was also starting with that.
Right, okay. Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
but you can
No,
go.
but go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
So, so we talked about Steve Jobs, obviously, it sort of comes up, and this thing about him saying that consumer research doesn't really, they don't know what they want. But research is still important, and the reason why I would like to say that he's been misinterpreted or misunderstood is there's a word called empathy that's all sort of instinctively know. Right? So if me or my designers really have to know what that 22-year-old newly married lady in Ludhiana needs, I should be able to get into her shoes very quickly so that I can judge whatever I'm doing is correct and appropriate or not. So I should be able to think for her, and that can happen through research. And that's why, though we say consumer doesn't know what he wants, but you really still need to know the consumer. So that's the point I wanted.
What you're saying is that design research throws up opportunities where you can sense and have the empathy, or get the opportunity
you
to.
can very confidently, after our design is done, I can very confidently say that this is not correct for her. What we've done is fancy, beautiful, but it's not correct. To be able to judge what is appropriate is a very important aspect because after that the entire money spending starts when you start doing the major, whether it's validation, whether it's engineering.
All right. Okay, so I'll go over to Abhimanyu. Yeah.
I think just to reflect on what you started saying, maybe one of the problems we find at least is that the whole, the word innovation maybe has too much to do with ideation. There's too much focus on creating new things, and somewhere we forget also about who's going to use these ideas, I think. And what design research also helps us to do, like Narendra is saying, is that to bring that insight in-house and get the whole team sensitized to our end users. That's a very important thing, because if you talk about the collaborative model of creation, to sensitize the team is very, very important, because then the teams are aligned in terms of what is the ambition. Sorry.
Low battery.
Yeah, you can use Narendra.
There's collaboration there.
So I just poured my heart and none of it was heard. Thank you.
So I think one of the things I think design research also helps you to do is to really aid this collaborative model, because then people can really sit around the table and understand, oh, this is the end user that you're talking about, and that also helps you to create kind of new scenarios, which then you can judge from the point of view of the end user.
I'd just like to add something here. There are these words coming up, like he said, it's the customer, and then earlier on it was the consumer, and now he's talking about the end user. I feel that they all coexist at the same time. They're all different people, and they sometimes exchange their roles as well. So when we talk about, we distinguish when we are doing research. When you talk about an institutional product being designed, you're probably talking to a customer or the purchase department of an institution, and they make the decision on purchasing a certain kind of product, but the users are probably placed elsewhere. Or when you're designing for a children's product, you're designing for the end user, whereas the consumer might be the parent or the mother, and probably the customer also, both the roles. So I think it's very important for the empathy part for designers to understand each of these roles and reflect and talk to people with the context of what is it that is going on in their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may,
Yes.
we actually use the word customer and the customer's customer. Because when we make an airplane, we are actually selling it to an airline. But then the usage is by you and me as the customer of the airline. And same thing applies in other areas too. So you are right. I mean, you have to think about who you are selling it to, what is their constraint. But you also have to think about the user, because if let's say an airline buys a bunch of airplanes because it's very inexpensive or it has all the technical features, but you and I as passengers hate to fly it, then the airline will go out of business, which means they will not be able to buy any more product from us. So you really have to think about the end user not as the person or company or group that is buying your product. You have to think about who would use it, how would they use it. And see, when I say engineering design, see, these are, today you may say there is a design institute, I'm thinking differently. But people have been doing design. People have been doing engineering. They have been coexisting for a long time. This is not the first time we are designing products. Somebody said earlier, the idea of design has been around for a long time. The design must touch the hearts of the people. Somebody mentioned, it has to be an emotional bond. That must be there. But whether you label it as an engineer thinking that way, or engineer does only numbers and there is somebody else who's a specialist who's thinking the other part, I think that is when you start creating this, boundaries. If you want to be a successful organization, you better figure out how to work together. And at that point, the distinction goes away. The designer becomes an engineer, the engineer becomes a designer, and as well as a marketeer. The distinction goes away. That's when you succeed.
Can I rebound on what you say?
Right.
Because you are talking about common sense, and the fact that we have to take into consideration the constraints, technology constraints, the market. I think in our world right now, every people know about the constraints of the market. Okay, businessmen are everywhere in the world, they know what they do. Engineers, they know what they do. They invent every day, they have new technology. Maybe they don't know what to do with it, but they do their job properly. But maybe what we don't know is for whom and why we are doing this. We want to sell, we want to create, but at the end, the most important is maybe so let's call him the consumer, the client. Okay, first level for business or marketing, we'll call it a client. Or as a user for the engineer, okay, the function, he has to be economic, okay. It answers the question of the engineer. Or we can also go another level if we talk about humanitarian or medical or the firefighter. What is the most important for him is the human. Okay, we are at an even higher level. Even a higher level is the cosmos, because we are believers or not, but we are all organized in a cosmos, and it's not only the human is in his environment. So the designer is kind of bridge between all of this, because he has to take in consideration the businessman. Yes, we have to sell. You have to take in consideration the engineer. Yes, we have to make it. We have to take in consideration the human. Yes, he has to help him in his life. And we have also to consider the cosmos, because there is one people, several people, the nature, everybody, and he has to answer to this cosmos. I think the designer is not focused on the user, is able to make the bridge between all these persons who are talking about about people in a different way. But we, as designers, were able to understand that our human is also a customer, is also a user, and is part also of an environment. I think this is where design research is important, because to understand this, you have to go deeply. You have to do a deep research, and you have to analyze this. Okay, at the different level.
May I respond to that? Yes. I completely agree with you. In fact, when you look at how we operate in Boeing, we think about the environmental impact at multiple stages. There's an environmental impact when we are designing the product, in terms of the manufacturing. How do you manufacture? What materials are involved? We also think about the environmental impact when we are using the product. We have a big effort, for example, on developing biofuels. Biofuels are now new technology, which is addressing what would happen to the environmental impact over the long haul. We also think about what happens to the product when its life cycle is over. You buy a car, nowadays when you drive around, you will see mounds of old cars sitting there and rusting. Now, how long can you do that? You have to think about how do you recycle these products. So, again, I guess, and actually in the Boeing company, we have 165,000 employees. There isn't one design group that does this. Mm-hmm. For us, the engineering team, the technology development team, and quote-unquote designer team is all blended. And in fact, there are people I have worked with who are, you might call them designers, but they are actually in the marketing department. They are working and envisioning products for the future. So I agree with you that we need to think about the bigger picture. But is it only the designer who does that, or does everybody else have to do that? I would contend everybody in the organization who is playing a role needs to think about it. You know, somebody mentioned design thinking. We call it systems thinking. You know, we think of it as a system. So we are operating within a larger system, including the environment.
Yeah.
So it's a difference in terminology probably, but the thought process is the same.
But it depends how design is involved in the company. Because if design is just the right hand of the marketing to do beautiful things, and it happens a lot, I mean, in most of companies, it's less and less like this. But
maybe it is.
Have a majority, even for the audience, I mean, for the public, when you ask what is design, oh, it's a nice, beautiful shape. I mean, they don't have this understanding of design is a process, design is a bridge. And I think we have to educate, and it's what I do finally with the young generation in the school where I work, is like to make understand that it's more than this. And if it's not understood, I think it's a problem of understanding. You understand this. But I think the majority of people don't understand this.
May I add to this? Yes. As a technology provider who kind of talks to both sides of the coin, the manufacturers, the designers, and the engineers, as you traditionally call them, one point that's now happening in the tools and technology domain is the admission of all the answers here. That yes, there should be a combination of all these things. The tools that we can provide today are bringing that capability down to a designer in a conventional term can be half an engineer. An engineer in the conventional terms can be somewhat of a designer. And the last interface is also getting plugged in terms of manufacturability. Like Bala mentioned, it should be manufacturable, it's sustainable, so on and so forth. So manufacturability with 3D prototyping, additive layer manufacturing becoming a reality is giving you more, I would say, design freedom. So I think that's how the evolution is happening.
Yeah, so what I gather from the discussion is that there is a little ecosystem of stakeholders, users, end users, humans, people. You might want to define it in any way, but these are normally people, right? They're people. And you need to consider the whole set of people to eventually deliver something meaningful. My initial question was, in your organizations and in the interactions you might have had with the industry, working as maybe as service providers, both of you here, do you see new meaning and value being created using design research? Yes, people is important, yeah. Designers do understand the need of people, but do the organizations are seeing the necessity? You talked about common sense, Bala, but within the larger scale of the organization, do you see a necessity where design research, whether it's done by engineers, it's done by designers, ethnographers, eventually is it adding to new value? Do you see that happening?
Okay,
So
I would say design thinking, we call it systems thinking, maybe they are very close. I think design thinking is useful. A designer, I don't know, because it's like, medicine is useful, but XYZ doctor may or may not be good. Okay, so I do need medicines, I do need medical facilities, but do I need a particular doctor or this particular hospital? That may or may not be true. So I would say the design thinking or the systems thinking is important, and whether it is done by people labeled as designers or labeled as a tiger team of, multidisciplinary group of people, I'm okay with either one. As long as the thought process comes in, as long as you think about the people, as long as you think about the environment, as long as you understand what technologies are necessary or technologies available, there are certain things we can do today, technology-wise, that we could not do 10 years ago or 50 years ago. But we had great products 50 years ago also. So it is not that the technology necessarily, prevents you from doing things. You can do certain things based on what is available. Sometimes people would say, well, it's available in the US but not available in India. Well, you come up with an Indian solution. So I guess I'm trying to make that boundary to be softer. I know it's fashionable to come up with, new words, innovation and, design thinking, whatever. There is a tendency for people to create new terminology because it sounds cool. But I guess my point is, as long as you have the fundamental thinking in the right way, it doesn't matter what you call it.
It will happen.
Yeah, the solution will come up.
Yeah, so do you see that happening?
Yeah, so if I understand your question correctly, one is the design research as it's traditionally known, whether it is still relevant, whether customers of ours really ask us to do that, and is there some change happening? So I'll give you two small examples of both of them. So for example, we have something called as India entry strategy. I mean, it's a big word, but essentially there are a lot of our customers, they're typically Japanese, who are trying to get a product into India. And essentially they want us to understand whether it will succeed, whether Indian market looks at it slightly differently from what they know, and can I represent India to them and tell them that this product does not need this feature and this is not how it works. So that's the, let's say, traditional use of design research, where we go out, do ethnography, do the entire set of tools that typically researchers do to understand and get back to them very clearly saying that this feature needs to go away, this feature needs to be changed, the size needs to be like this is how it is used, you don't need these two things. And many projects are where the research is used in this way. The other thing that is happening is partly what we had discussed earlier about future forecasting, or a bit of trend forecasting. Now, a lot of technology companies, even some startups, and Bangalore is a sort of startup capital, you have, and we talked about IoT, but you have a lot of these technologies that people know, see, when I do this, this happens, but now what do I do with it? And then they are suddenly very excited about the technology per se, but they don't know how will it convert into something that the people actually want. And if you're trying to create something that is not for the early adopters, where people are very let's say gizmo friendly and they will try something, we're talking about a mass market, then to really accurately tell them that this is how they will react to this new technology and this is how you need to present it to them, is the new importance of research that is coming in.
All right. Okay, so let me move on to the next topic, which I thought, again, I'll try to provoke you here. Yeah, and see that there's a different reaction. I've been successful? Okay, good, thank you. So, again, some basics, like, for example, there are 3 intents to design research, which I have qualified here. Yeah. So, first is about creating an understanding about efficiency. Yeah. Efficiency here stands for, let's say, ability to function better, produce better, sell better, fit better, human factors, man, object, see better, read better, and so on. Yeah. The second part about design research, that it helps create a direction for better experiences. I think somebody talked about it in the morning session also, about creating better experiences by understanding people, their wishes, trends, habits. Yeah. The third is about testing hypotheses, yeah, establishing if design directions are aligned to visionary objectives of business, organizations, the goals, even technology for that matter. So again, I see a big gap between designers and design teams' ability to use effective solutions to deliver sensible solutions. Are those solutions, those methods available, and what are they today? Since all of you are practicing, we would, I think not just me, the entire audience here would like to know, what is it that you are doing to figure these things out? Yeah, I mean, it's right to say, let's go to Ludhiana and look at the lady in the sari and so on. Sorry, not the lady in the sari. But how do you do it, right? So that was my question. And if you see the world today, and I think someone mentioned this word, systems. Yeah, the world is becoming complex, extremely complex. We are not thinking of simple objects. It's not a little chair nicely crafted, handcrafted, and designed where I'm going to sit on. We are talking about systems. Yeah. We are talking about objects which are linked to spaces, linked to technology, linked to distribution, retail, and so on. Number of things are happening around one little problem that you might be working on. We are thinking systems. So extracting information for carrying out this job is a complex process. So now, again, I'm coming back to the methods part. Right? So how do you go about extracting information to address such complex problems? Yeah? That is my larger question. For example, if you were to design a passenger train today to run between Mumbai to Delhi, yeah, how would you go about it? Because you are talking about planners, engineers, train pilots, passengers, service providers, station spaces, connectivity, technology, and so on. Yeah, many aspects. How does that one designer go about thinking this? how do you ensure that your entire team, designers, I mean all kind of designers, yeah, put together, how do they learn from this? Yeah? How do they go about applying? How do they get those insights which Narendra talked about in the marketplace? Yeah, we saw the Whirlpool gentleman talking about it. Yeah, so that's my question. All right, so
Yeah.
raise your hand and start answering. The lady first.
So I feel that while design research is very important, and it's not just about users and consumers and the people who are going to use, it's also about the technology side, the material side, the processing side, manufacturing side. It's design research is like gives you a good view of a 360 view of what is the context within which you're trying to create your product. While it's very important, it's not a pill that you take. You've taken the design research pill and now your product and solution is going to come out just right. I think it's what you do after that. How is it that you use the findings of your research and make sure that you give due respect to each of those findings? Think about what's coming from the users, what's coming from the technology side, what's coming from the manufacturing side. Put it right into a good, well thought out solution, and then that's where probably it will work. You are right. I think there's a dearth of tools there, but it's more about the way you process it. It's more about the way you think and go about coming out with the solutions that fit right, and not neglect any of these things, because I feel that a lot of times one tends to overlook certain areas which are a little complicated. You take the easier path, and these days a lot of startups, somebody mentioned startups, right? A lot of startups have come up, and we are talking about agile and lean development and agility coming into the system, where you quickly create something, you quickly put it out into the market, like you're virtually creating a proof of concept product. So it's not a proof of concept prototype, it's a proof of concept product which quickly goes into the market. You fail fast and you come back and you create another one. So while it's good, it's good to do it with certain small things, small products, but I don't know, can you just push a product down the throat of a consumer or a user and keep loading zooming out the bigger picture, what he was talking about, that keep loading your systems, your ecology, your cosmos with these things that you're creating as V1 version which fails, and then you create your V2 version, then you create your V3 version. So yes, you're right. I mean, about the tools that you mentioned, we do need more of those things, but I also feel that we need to be sensitive towards how are we using them and what is it that we are trying to create, whether it's appropriate in the given context or not.
Sure. So, okay. So let me jump to Bala. Bala, Boeing, I mean, aerospace is a very complex, system-oriented place. So how do you deal with it there?
Let me give you an example. When we envision products, we have been making products for so long. I think Whirlpool experience is probably along similar lines. It's not that easy for us to go from V1 to V2 and V3 very quickly. These are machines that we make. It takes a long time to make them the first time, and if something goes wrong, it takes a long time to do a different version of the same thing. It's not like software or gadgets that we all carry these days. Microsoft can keep sending updates every Tuesday, but aerospace products or automobiles or washing machines can't do that. So in those situations, you have to think a lot more ahead of time before you commit to whatever your end design is. And the way we do it is we bring the people together. We have the concept of what we call an IPT. It's an integrated product team. And IPT by definition brings in people with various backgrounds. Again, not only a background, but they bring in the relevant information. If they don't have the information, they go get it from wherever their expertise or their domain helps them to. So going back to the process, if you want to succeed, you want to create a complex project, you have to, I don't think complex products are created anymore by one designer. There used to be a time when we used to do that. I mean, if you go back in aerospace, back in the 1930s and 1940s, you would say this aircraft so-and-so was a designer. You don't see that anymore. When we talk about the Boeing 787, there is no one person that we say is the designer, because this thing is much more complex than one person imagining it. It is something that evolves based on many discussions, questions, answers to those questions, and basically an amalgamation of many different perspectives with some vision in mind. I mean, you cannot just say, let's all get together and design, there'll be chaos. So there has to be a guiding principle, there has to be a goal, vision that you're working to, but not, two people go and do their own thing, because they probably will miss, several different points. So you bring in the third person, the fourth person, the 15th person to make sure that you have not missed anything significant. So that's kind of how we go about developing products.
So Bala, if I gather you talked about a multi-skill team.
Correct.
Which is one of the methods of reaching a solution. Have you, any of you, gone through this process of being part of multidisciplinary teams?
Yeah.
And what would they be? Right.
Maybe I just wanted to comment.
Yes.
Thing that you talked about earlier.
I think you will have to co-create with.
So, I think one of the things that has probably happened with design research
is this, there used to be a time, at least when I started, like, okay, the designers were the only people who were in the organization talking about getting user insights. So we were the ones who were like kind of, waving the flag saying that, hey, look, this is what the users want or the consumers want. But today, there is a deluge of information. Yeah, it's like the marketing knows about it, the marketing intelligence knows about it. There are lots of departments, there's online, there is so much of information. I think the design researcher's role now has also changed into someone who can synthesize that information. He can bring clarity to that information for the teams. And it's very important because also I think most of the products, at least I can talk from our own experience, which are in the sort of the digital domain or which are physical plus digital, it's very important to understand the ecosystem. Like for example, if I just say Philips, we have a product called as a Hue, which is about changing the colors of the lights in your house, right? So you have a bridge, you have an app, and you have the LED lamps. Now there are so many apps out there who have been created by the third parties. Now unless you understand that ecosystem of the third party developers, the vendors, people who are making LED lamps, and our competitors, you won't be able to really define what is the challenge that we are going for here. So it's not so much about, I think, finding the answers, it's really finding what are the right questions we should ask. So I think design research is also becoming a lot more strategic in that sense. It's not just about getting the data, but it's more about curating the data, really making it simple for people to understand and then to cull out insights for for us to act on.
So let me stretch this since I was trying to focus on methodology. So maybe you could answer or Narendra could answer. Now, how do you? You are anyway sharing the mic. How do you look at things like trends? Yeah, how do you look at colors? I think these things also eventually become part of research, right? You talked about color hues. How do you figure out what color of light to throw on the wall? Eventually. So how does that happen? And
so I think
you also can continue after. Abhinav.
Let me answer and then maybe. So I think that's where also it is important to understand maybe the role of data which complements maybe physical design research. For example, if you look at Hue itself, now we have applications where we can actually track how many people in the world are right now using Hue and what colors have they turned on. This is something that you would not physically be able to ever figure out by doing design research. But there are a lot of useful insights which come from just knowing that information. And now as a design researcher, your job is to basically combine these two. One is maybe very objective, quantitative information, but to really cull out, maybe visualize that data and to bring it together with what you have found in physical design research. And then to say, hey, look, maybe here is an insight. Because sometimes what we have also found, say in healthcare, is that the people may not know what the data is showing. Right. Like even the doctors may not know. There's a very good experiment actually in the neonatal ICUs, for the premature babies, where the doctors basically believed that the babies whose temperature was changing actually are in danger. Whereas the big data showed that actually the babies who were stable in temperature are the ones who are likely to get a sepsis attack. And that could only come because you looked at the big data and you analyzed it to call out the insights.
Sure.
So I think in that sense you have to kind of like coexist and make the best of what you have now.
Sure.
You know?
So I'm going to talk about the exact opposite end of the spectrum. And though, of course, what we're talking about using, let's say, analytical tools to really understand insights is the big thing in research nowadays. But for example, I mean, we are doing a fairly large project, and we've been doing it for some time, which is predicting what would be the color of India, or let's say the trends that would happen. And the reason why they want a designer to sort of start thinking about trends, because it's very difficult to forecast, is the method involves studying everything about the user. What does he eat? What kind of house does he live in? Where does he go on vacation? What kind of appliances does he buy? And it is people, I feel, designers are very instinctively, empowered to sort of connect these sort of unconnected things and then relate it to maybe color. And this has been working quite often, and that's another end of research where prediction is still more instinctive, still about connecting dots that are not obvious.
Would you like to add to this?
No, I think
How do you, anyway, you're also teaching
I think you just talk about something important. As designers, we are talking a lot about process. Okay, of course, it's a process. And I think a good designer, and normally it's what we want, it's someone who has got kind of intuition. I think there is also this kind of part that is important. So there is a process, there is a tool. I think big data, it's just a tool basically. It's after what you do with it, is what you are talking about. It's how you implement, how you process this information. Okay? So I think it's a mix of intuition, something that is really personal, maybe because it's someone who is creative, and maybe creative people have kind of sensibility that maybe less creative people don't have. I don't know, it's a question mark. And it's a mix of this and also this process. It's not only about gathering data. It's about how you gather the data and what do you do with it and for what. And I think there is this, but also there is a willingness what the company wants, what the leader wants.
Yeah.
Basically, a leader in a company normally is a person. If he's a good leader, a boss will be just do this, do this, do this. A leader will say, give me this information, give me this, give me this, give me this, and I run my company, okay, in the right direction. So you need to have a vision. If you don't have a vision, basically, it's not good. So you need to gather this information. But as a leader, in general, in a company, is more business driven. So do you think that a company who is only thinking about business will do something right? I'm not sure. Reason why, if you put the design, because this is the ability of design to be able to gather things. If you put the design at a strategic level, maybe it becomes a leader. So maybe we can talk about Steve Jobs. He's not a designer, but he was thinking as a designer.
So designer as an assimilator.
So I think design is not about what we do, it's at what level we put design. Because in the past, design was just, okay, as you said, okay, nice shape, up, etc. Design me the new cars, a new product. We will sell more because they like blue, because they like rounded shape. This is a trend. No, it's not about this. It's about gathering all this information. And it's not only about trend. It's also about you are talking about engineering and production. But you need to put this at a higher level. Right. If you put it too low, it's impossible because design will not be considered as a bridge, or it will be just considered as a bridge, but it has to be higher to be considered as a leader, someone we can just pull.
So let me jump from here to the other end of the spectrum, where you talked about using data which could be visualized and then simulated, right? And that maybe reduces a whole lot of risk of failures, and many times failures are not cannot be afforded at times. I think that's why
I think
your work comes in.
The point that you were talking about was, it almost sounded like design research is one phase, followed by a creative process, which is then domain of a designer. And then comes engineering, and then comes manufacturing. But I think, truly speaking, design research is something which goes across, Ashish. I think with the emerging technologies that you have, like what Abhimanyu mentioned, with IoT becoming a reality, you have information coming in all the time. It's all design points of view for you. And it's something which is, I think someone talked about a spiral, you spoke about the spiral of activity. It's all intertwined. So it's a job that I think design research is not a one-time affair. It's a complete ongoing affair which needs to be part of the life cycle and may even spread, in the case of highly engineered products like what Bala spoke about, into the service life cycle, where then the whole life cycle is so important for them. Because I'm sure the consumer, in that case, the first B in his B2B is the airline. And for them, the service life cycle is critically important. So design research, I think, is more a combination. And I might want to urge the design community to embrace some of these more scientific techniques. Because one of the things that we notice, at least, when we speak to the creative community, is some kind of an avoidance of, oh, this is engineering stuff. I think it's time to mix both and come up with something which bridges the gap.
I just want to add one more thing. While we are talking about different, like the engineering part and the designers all coming together, I feel the users also need to become participative now. Because the data that you were talking about, there was a recent project that we are doing where we were collecting data about colors for a product, consumer product, that people would be interested in. And it's targeted at, age group of 20s. So they're young, cheerful people. And they all said they were wanting to go in for grays and blacks. And so we were very surprised that, how does this happen? Because there's something in their mind, right? So that's the data we collect. But then we feel that it doesn't really work. So let's show them something which goes beyond that. And we created things and said, what if it's like this, and they change, they flip. So if you just go by the data and you put your product out into the market and you don't look at the what ifs, probably once they see it's something that they may not be able to tell you, right? So I think it's the bridging.
It's not about what they do, it's more about what they could do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And exactly, I was just going to come back to you, Graham. I think design research is half the reality. Like, it just tells you what's the current reality. But what you create by this what-if scenario is what you're giving the vision. Because that comes from your brand. That's how you express. Because design research could be done practically by the same people, across the companies. They're looking at the same data. Probably they're using meeting also the same consumers. So getting same insights maybe. And what do you do with it now? But you have to put your own vision on it. And I think, just like what Mr. Pawan said also, I think that iterative process of, using technology to constantly experiment with that what-if scenarios is, I think, what works really well these days. Because you're really leveraging technology as well as you're leveraging your own vision, in that sense.
And also asking for users' participation into your process.
Yeah.
So it goes round and round.
So there is a data-driven research which is happening, where data is coming from all over the place, you don't know. A lot of co-creative processes have come up, trying to, like what you mentioned just now. But there is also user-driven data. And one of the good examples is what Philips has done is that little thermostat, I think it's called Next or something. Yeah, Next. Which collects the data from the house and so on. So as the user uses it, and hence it aids eventually better design and better performance, right? So that's another area which is happening. Any thoughts on how technology is going to affect design research? Are you going to change methods? Are you looking? You already changed methods.
Yeah.
I think it's because I think, Ashish, like in healthcare, or in any field, I think there are some problems which are wicked problems, right? Okay, you make people aware that maybe some food is bad for them, like fried food is bad for you, but still you continue to eat. Like, say, if you look at an office environment, how do you actually find out if your people are productive, right? So how you can't just do that by asking people, are you being productive today, right? I mean, how would you ever figure that out? And I think technology is helping us to do that because, for example, if you look at say, eating nutritious food or compliance to medication, if you look at the social profile of a person, let's say if you analyze their social media presence and you know who their influencers are, who's their friend circle, you can actually leverage that to influence their behavior. And I think this is the way you could really turn around, something that people are willingly able to share, but use that for their own benefit. Yeah, something that would really make profound difference to their lives.
Just a small, since you're talking about new tools that are coming in research field, it's not something that, let's say, I would want to do, but these guys came over and gave a demo of this thing that you wear on your head, and it had all these, electrodes,
Sensors.
and it was detecting and interpreting based on what the person saw, what he feels, or whether he's happy about it, or whether there's an affinity towards it. And their proposition to us was that, we'll design it as a nice cap, and you send your users to do shopping, and you'll get a lot of this important data that can then be analyzed. So these tools are out there, so I'm sure someone will start using it, and you'll again get a lot of data points, which again you have to put your intelligence onto it to understand what they say.
Okay. So let me move to the last session before we open it out to the audience. We are a little short on time. To do all this, what we just discussed about design research, I think one of the key components is to have people who can deliver design research. So designers who are sensitive, designers who are sensitized to the process. I think we talked about ethnographers, social scientists, and other such people who could add engineers who are sensitive to the entire design process, engineers who could integrate along with the other members of the team. Do you think we have the right kind of people available today in India? I think we are the only one from the education sector right now amongst us, but I think everyone is free to comment on that because all of us are going to be working with these people. So is today's design workforce trained enough? Are the numbers good enough? So both quality as well as quantity. Any comments on this?
I think there is two things. We have and will have more, even more, because design is more and more recognized, and this is good. Is it enough recognized now? I'm not sure. If I have to talk about India, for example, we know, by experience, I'm here in India for 3 years, that even the candidates tell me this, or the students who managed to join the school told me, yes, my parents was pushing me to go as an engineer, you are going in IT, or you are going for medical, or you are going to be a lawyer. Why? Because, you are going to success, okay? Success for them and success for their family. So of course we have to maybe, I think, create awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Create awareness not at a professional level, but at a nationwide, on the national level and also in the world, to show that design is not going to sell. So let's say is not going to be alone. We are talking about a team, but will push, I think, in the good direction. And I think, for example, India face a lot of problems. We can see it in the street, etc. Not only pollution, but the fact that I'm not able to walk in the street. There is no walkway. If there is a walkway, there is a gap. This is just basics. And I think by design, by analyzing what is the real problem. The real problem is not to have the new smartphone, to have new malls everywhere, so we can do shopping like we do in US, like we do in Europe. It's finished. So we have to change the direction. But it's not at a design level. We have to push as designer, of course. I think it's more about companies. So basically there is business, but there's also ethics and also what drives you in your life. It's not about only business. And also it's about government, association, because this demands a lot of infrastructure, it demands a lot of investment, but investment that is going in the right way. And designers can help, can be part of this.
Yeah, I would like to comment. Earlier somebody was talking about, when you think in terms of engineers versus emphasis, designers, the thought process is that the engineers are somehow very analytical, left brain type people, and the designers are just free thinking, right brain type people. The people who are successful, in producing great products, whether it's a Steve Jobs or, the new Whirlpool washing machine or whatever, requires you to have this left brain and right brain working together. Now, if you are lucky, you have a strong left brain and a strong right brain. Most of us are not that way. We prefer to be working either on the left side or on the right side. If that is the case, if you are a left brainy, then go get hooked up with a right brain person so you can work together and have that combination. That is where the teaming idea comes in. The other problem is the whole data that we talked about. There is one problem with the data and following trends. Trends are trends because they don't stay forever. If something is trendy today, you go look up Google, something else is trending tomorrow. So you can't get too connected to the trend. There has to be something bigger that you have to think about. So I don't think the question is, do we have enough designers? Should we now, have 10 design schools instead of 3? I don't think that's going to solve your problem. I think the education system needs to introduce these ideas so people are aware, like Yoma was saying. But more than that, people have to accept, and in fact we probably have to teach our young people, that just because they have a degree in whatever subject, it could be engineering, it could be marketing, it could be design, that's not the end of their learning. If they want to be successful, if they want to contribute, they have to continue learning. If I'm an engineer, maybe I need to learn about design. If I'm a marketing person, maybe I need to learn about technology. So I don't sit there saying, I'm a marketing guy, I talk to all my clients and that's what they want, you engineers are terrible. It's not about that. If you want to succeed, you better figure out how to work together. So I think it's not so much about do we need more designers. It is more about making the people grow in a more holistic manner, and that will not happen in 4 years. There's just not enough time in the 4-year whatever program. Even if you bring a genius person, 4 years is not enough to transform them into this ideal person. There's going to take a lot more continuous learning on the part of these people.
Sure. Thank you, Bala. I completely agree on Bala here. Anybody wants to make a quick comment on the fact that design thinking needs to be
I think just one
infused
comment.
across? Yeah.
One comment. Just like MBA thinking has gone in for business administration, where many engineers after years of working do an MBA, I think the design, I would say, institutions could give an option for regular practicing engineers to pick up design philosophy or design thinking as design research, whatever you call it, a little later on in their career. I don't see too many options in that domain today. I think that's something which I would like to leave a thought on the table for all of you.
Sure. I think there are enough people from education background in the audience. I think maybe somebody can pick on this subject, but it's open now to the audience. I think if you have a question, one right over.
I'm Deepthi Pant from Pearl Academy. I also have a background in design research, and for a product like yours, where it is very difficult to catch, I won't use the word trends because I saw that you're not very comfortable with trends, but what the consumer wants next. It is easier to catch and understand or even envision what a consumer wants, let's say in a consumer durable or possibly in a phone or in a lifestyle, but in an airspace experience, what a consumer wants. How do you do that? How do you vision? How do you set your future ideas? More so because the turnaround time in the industry is just not a year or a 2-year or a 3-year, it's a 10-year, decade thing because products don't change so fast. So do you use design research? Do you use something beyond that? How do you go about it?
Okay, we do research. I won't call it design research, we do research. As we were talking, to me, what is generally being referred to here as design research is very, very close to strategic thinking. It is very, very close to, a good engineer or a technology. I say good in quotes because if you are a good engineer, you should be thinking more than just your computer program or your little sphere of expertise that you have. So we envision what the future might look like. Of course, none of us knows. Even the astrologers don't know for sure. So we have to look at scenarios. you know, would it look like this? If it looks like this way, how would we respond? If it looks a different way, how would we respond to that? So we have to envision the future and work towards that.
There's another question now. I'm curious about it. When you're looking
Dipti,
at this,
I will have to
We can talk
request
after.
you.
We can talk
I think you
after.
can take it up post-lunch. I'm going to allow for one more question. This is the last question on this side, because the thing up there is now flashing. It's like, wow, it's going to go off.
4 minutes over time.
Hi, I'm Sean.
Gonna explode.
I'm a designer. I have a very important question for you guys. I'm sorry, not for Boeing, literally, because it's very scientific.
Good.
What I want to know about is when you're designing, like even I faced this, for a general target audience, okay? And you do the design research, you do that, you know, sari in Ludhiana, lady in Ludhiana with a sari, whatever. What about the digital divide? Because we have to understand we're a very large population, and out of that, a very small amount of people they know what Twitter is, they know what a handle is, they know what a hashtag is. My own father is like, what is this? Every time in the morning it is hashtag A, hashtag O. What is that? So that digital divide, how do designers today, or even you guys who are heading all of this, how do you plan to, you know, conquer that? How do you plan to face that problem? Because not everyone will know that that button, you know, turns on your Cortana or your Siri.
Sure.
How do you face that?
It's a good question. This side? Yeah, please take it.
I think maybe somewhere, I don't know, maybe I feel your thinking is driven by what you see around you, because our experience is very different. For example, if I were to give you, there was a research project that we did in rural Karnataka where we're working with Manipal Hospital and working with ASHA workers who wanted basically for tracking the pregnant women in the rural area, in the catchment area, something that they used to do with a piece of paper. We converted that into a phone. And we thought, oh, maybe these people are like, they are not very familiar with the phone, so maybe let's start with a simple phone. But you would be amazed in 1 day's time, the house, proficient they became in handling the smartphones. So I think the accessibility is not a problem of understanding the technology. I think people are very erudite in that sense. People are very literate. They just may not be able to write, but that doesn't mean they're uncultured or they're not smart, you know. And I think if we recognize that, then we can empower them. And we can try to do more and more such things to bring technology to, these underprivileged segments. So I don't think it's a problem of the digital. I think it's a problem of accessibility, costs, etc., etc.
Can I
All right.
say something? I feel I see an opportunity there. This hashtag is an issue, because it's come out of a limitation of the technology probably, you know, and if somebody can crack it and make it much easier for people who want to express their opinions and put it together, I'm sure it can.
I know, you have one more design problem to solve, right?
Yeah.
So I know your hand is raised, but my host is here indicating that I think we should call it off. So I think just take it during the lunch session. So all of you, I'm sure there are questions, because I think design research deals with an unanswered, there's a little ambiguity there. I mean, you heard a lot of experiences coming out here, and it's clearly, the statement remains that design research is key to, eventually how organizations will deal with business and as well as social successes. However, it's something which is constantly transforming, and you have to be, I think, changing on the go, depending on the problems and so on. Yeah. So I think a big thanks to the panel over here. I think interesting points.